to keep staring at myself. I'm like, ooh.
I'm just gonna get a cup of water. Do you want some hemp milk?
Alright, I'll try it.
Okay, I'll pour you some.
I'm curious now.
I didn't flavor it. Sometimes I flavor it, but this time I just wanted like.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. My mom just made a fresh batch of soy milk, and to be honest, it tastes a tiny bit like laundry detergent.
Oh my gosh.
So she has these bags, right, that she so that she can strain out the soy, and it's like, sorry. And she put one of the bags in the laundry, and for some reason the bag like absorbed the flavor or smell of the laundry detergent, and it's really funny.
You like use your thumbs and you push it.
Okay.
Yeah, push like the bottom.
Oh, right. We do have one of these at home, and I can never figure it out. Okay, I don't want to take too much, I just want to taste it, because I am curious now that we're...
Yeah, it's an interesting flavor.
Ooh, that's nice. It does remind me a bit of like, it's a little bit like oat milk, but like a tiny bit grassier, and it's really nice.
It's like, yeah, I feel like it's really earthy. It's like, yeah, I like it. It's very neutral.
Yeah, it's like a tiny bit nutty too. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Honestly, making like milks out of like random fatty grains and seeds has been pretty fun for me. Like, because I never thought about doing that until like I went on my retreat, and like we did it a lot. We were just experimenting.
Nice.
Like, yeah, we also made like flours out of a lot of different things.
Yeah, I know there's black bean flour. There's actually cricket flour. So if you ever get into like the whole insect agriculture thing, I don't know how widespread it is, but I did hear of like a product that's cricket flour. It's very high in protein apparently, so.
I need to try that. I actually have not looked into insect agriculture at all.
It's like, I think it's a growing industry regarding animal feed for sure, because right now a lot of America's agriculture, like, it's not even just feeding us, it's about feeding the animals. So like there are a lot of alfalfa, and a lot of corn actually goes to feeding cows and pigs and chickens and stuff like that. And so there are some startups that are trying to they're trying to replace like corn with insects. So like there's like these black flies that are apparently very fast growing. They like mature fully in like 60 days, and it's really easy to grow a whole bunch of them, right? You just like have trays of rotting food, you throw the maggots or the eggs onto them, and then you can have like, you could stack all the trays. So you can really pack a lot of these things into small areas, and they don't like really need sunlight, they don't need like airflow or anything. They just need to be left alone for a while, and suddenly you can just put them into animal feed, and it's high in protein, it's high in calcium, and actually really big benefit is because insects are so different from humans, disease transmission is extremely low. So like mad cow disease, one of the reasons that it's like, if you eat the meat, it'll transfer to you. It's like, we're both mammals, but insects have like almost nothing in common with humans, so we can't really get diseases from them just by eating them.
That's kind of like almost against my like intuition. So I'm like, insects, like I'm like worried that I'll get sick.
Yeah, I guess like you would think that like, oh, they're gross, or
yeah.
And like, to be fair, like you don't know where flies have been, so when they land on your food, you're like, oh, that's disgusting. But like once you cook them or something, like it's probably safe. Yeah, at least from what I've heard.
Yeah, I actually watched a Vox video recently about like how much water alfalfa production. It's like the majority, like, and that actually kind of maybe I've been thinking about this a lot, but like it made me think even more deeply about how a lot of times I think about becoming like more environmentally friendly. I think about like what I can do, but then it's just like such a stark and large difference between how much water like all humans use for like living, like residential stuff, versus like how much is used to produce like alfalfa, which is mostly going to feed animals. So it's like maybe I should shift my priorities if I really want to get involved in like the effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you have to be aware of how much and how little you can actually accomplish. Like you, Spencer, I don't think you're going to be able to take on the entire alfalfa industry by yourself. But I think there are little things that we can all do. Like, but I do feel like it's hard for people to be like, oh, you know, there's so many things going wrong, and like there are entire industries built on things that we don't even see. And so it's hard for us to even imagine like what's going on behind the scenes and how certain things get to certain products actually get to us.
So how do we make decisions then?
Have you ever seen The Good Place?
A little bit of it.
Mm-hmm. In the later seasons, they kind of get into the how complicated things are. They like use the example where, like in the 1700s, if you bought roses for your grandmother, like that would be like +6 points positivity in the world. But in the modern day, if you tried to buy flowers for someone, you would basically, the purchase of that flower supports the industries that brought it to you. So it's like transportation industry, the flower growers that are using like pesticides on their plants, the corporation that sells the plants, the flowers to you is probably run by some asshole who's just doing drugs and like abusing people. So
Wow.
so like the single act of like buying flowers for your grandmother technically should be a positive experience because you're like giving something to someone, but in the end, because it supports all of these like cascading industries that are doing net harm to the world, it becomes like a morally bad act. And so like it was funny because like the whole point of The Good Place is like how do we live moral lives, I guess. And I think it's kind of like a refutation of the idea that you have to like weigh the moral costs of every single one of your actions, because like you as a human are very limited in your knowledge, and you don't have the time to research every single brand and know which ones to support and which ones you shouldn't, just because of the net good and harm. So yeah, I don't know, it's hard, it's rough out there.
So they don't give like a suggestion?
Their focus is very much in the afterlife. So that like that kind of changes things. It was never really about fixing the world in the present state. It was more about how like that whole afterlife idea of like after you die someone weighs your soul and decides if you're a good person or a bad person. And in a world like ours, where it's extremely complicated to decide if you're a good or bad person, like how do you fix the afterlife so that not everyone gets sent to hell? And I guess it does have this like moral philosophy idea. So like in the end, it's like you try to live your life in the present as best you can. But it was really more about fixing the afterlife than it was about like trying to fix the world.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I had a friend in college who just stopped eating avocados, like randomly.
Really?
Because how a lot of avocados come from Mexico, and there's like, it's just pretty much impossible to know if there's like blood on your avocado that you're eating. And that's true for almost every produce that you purchase that isn't like grown in your own backyard. And even then, like the seeds become iffy. So, like growing in your own backyard or like sourced really locally, so you can like see the process of it being produced and grown. So, I was like, damn.
I do know there's at least one town in Mexico where they actually used the avocado revenues to liberate themselves from the cartels. By like, so they literally like made so much money off of the avocados that the cartels tried to extort them, you know, because they were like, oh, you have money, give us money. And then the residents were like, what if we bought guns ourselves? And so they bought guns themselves and like became like their own avocado cartel. And on one level, it's just like, huh, that kind of works. So like, yeah, they're not under the finger of like drug cartels anymore. But like, I think some of the other residents were just like, now our town is only avocados, and that's a little weird. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it. But it is funny that like your friend just stopped eating avocados.
He's like, I don't even want to think about the moral implications. I'm just gonna not eat it. It's not that important to me. I was like, fair. Like, yeah. I mean, this whole thing makes me like, I mean, I think about this all the time. And I don't think there's like a clean solution. Have you heard of the term wicked problem? A wicked problem?
No.
It's like a problem that is so connected to other desires or like other problems that, and like people think about them so differently that there's no solution for it. No full, complete solution for it. So like poverty is one of them.
Yeah.
Food, access to food, like those kind of like, usually every global
big
problem
umbrella inequality. Yeah.
But it's like, I feel like the Earth has always been interconnected. Like it's not like a new thing. It's just that it's more of like a human interconnectedness that we're building, but like the concept of like, you know, eating this grape in like 5,000 years ago. This grape like grew from this earth, this soil that's like, you know, recycled by this group of fungi that like is eaten by this insect that's then eaten, you know, like that like chain of this like web of connectedness that's always existed.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like the real difference now is that we think about it so like mechanically now. We're like, oh, like we gotta maximize, like be perfect, because we care about something. Yeah.
I think it's like, I was reading this book called The Great Derangement by I'm gonna mispronounce it. I think it's Amitav Ghosh, and he was talking about how like for the longest time there was an understanding that like nature and the non-human natural elements of the world was still like a major part of the world. Like we couldn't just ignore it. And then at some point in like the past few centuries with the Industrial Revolution and like Western science, that people seem to have decided that like, you know, there's that one Bible quote about like Adam and Eve, and God was like, oh yeah, you know, God gave Adam dominion over nature. And so like nature has been exploited and stuff like that. And it's only recently with climate change that we're all coming back and realizing, okay, there's superstorms everywhere, the climate is getting hotter, like freaky shit is happening in nature that we can't control anymore. And we're like, oh shit, we just kind of forgot it was out there. Like we forgot there could be consequences for our actions. And I think it's interesting that like you're right, a lot of our modern world was built on like the kind of like mechanistic steps of like how to get, like everything was just logistics, like how to get this thing from here. And instead of thinking of things as relationships, right? Like there's a relationship between the earth and the people who tend to it, and the result of that relationship is like produce. And so you have the produce, the earth gives it to you, you give back to it by caring for these plants. And so like if you have these relationships with like the people who fish, like my parents are like good friends with the fishmonger at one of the Chinese supermarkets, and so like if you have relationships with these people, they will help you out. They'll be like, okay, this is good fish today, like that one's really fresh. And so like if you foster the relationships not just with other humans but with like the world around you, I think it's a much healthier, more wholesome way to live. It's very hard right now because we have like a lot of layers of separation, I think, between the world and us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, like I feel like I've been spending a lot of because it's such an innate interest of mine, like trying to figure out where that separation came from.
mm-hmm.
Because like we literally emerged from the earth, like, so why would the earth produce something that's so bad for its balance?
Well, I think I don't think we emerged with any intent, you know. It's hard to say that the earth created us for a purpose. Like, we just exist. If evolution is a process, right, it just keeps creating over and over and over again, and like natural selection kind of cuts down on that. There's like a constant push and pull between like that, I think it's entropy, right? Like the tendency towards chaos,
mm-hmm.
and then the collapse of that, like, you know, I feel like there's also this push towards simplicity, right? So like if there's too much, something has to give, and so like things go extinct all the time. So it's hard to say that like we're here for a purpose. I think we're here.
It just happened.
It just happens.
Yeah.
So like we have to. There's something. Like now that we're here, what do we do? I don't know.
I feel like life is like art, like just like a huge art piece, because it like doesn't really have, like it's hard to like pin down like a purpose, like a singular purpose or meaning. I mean, people try to do it all the time. Maybe there is. I'm not going to say it's not out there, but at the very least, it's like super beautiful, like, and entertaining and like lively.
I think there was a philosopher who was saying that like life is, I don't think he said it was life is a journey. Oh my god. I have like a video on YouTube that I've like favorited because it's one of the most beautiful things that I've like ever listened to. It was just like,
Send me.
yeah, but like at the end he was kind of talking about how people spend their whole life journeys pursuing something outside of them. And they're like, oh, you know, you follow the rules. Like you go to school, you finish school, you get a job, you have the job, you get married, you're like doing all these things, you check off all the boxes, and you get to the age of 40 and you're like, oh, I've arrived. And you just feel the same as you always felt. And so you're like, what was the meaning of that? And it's like you weren't supposed to get anywhere. You weren't supposed to reach a destination. The whole point was the journey, you know. Life is not like the point of music is not to reach the end, because otherwise all musical compositions would be a single note. So
that analogy,
it was so good, it blew my mind. I was like, oh, you're right. And I think he mentioned it's like it was, the whole thing was a song and you were just supposed to dance.
sorry.
Isn't it? It's just like you hear that and you're just like, I need a second.
I fully agree though, but I don't think I would have agreed with that like when I was in high school, because there's everything was so goal oriented.
Yeah, because the only music you were hearing was like what's the like the Kill Bill sirens or something. It's like it's so hard to in high school when you're so young and inexperienced, you don't know anything other than what everyone's been telling you, and what everyone is telling you is to like keep going at the rat race, you know, and just like stick to the grind. Better to do it now than later, right?
That has been huge. It's like the whole thing about delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I get it,
Oh my
but
god.
also I don't really get it. Like,
Yeah, my ex was like super big on that. And to the point where I was just like, at a certain point, you just have to admit you're miserable. Like, this is not
so how
delayed.
long are you gonna delay this? You only
Yeah.
have this much lifetime, to experience anyways. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
all about hedonism, like mindful hedonism. Mindful
Yeah.
hedonism.
I don't think there's definitely like self-destructive hedonism. But I think like there is no reason to suffer if there is another way out.
Right.
You know. I don't think you're accomplishing anything by suffering.
I would like to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Can you summarize your emotional experience in the past week with 7 words? I'm gonna do, or maybe not 7. Let's do 5 words.
5 words. It doesn't have to be a sentence, right?
No, just 5 words, and you also can't think about it too much.
Okay.
It has to be like more impromptu.
Okay. I would say guilt, reflection, hope, curiosity, and I think like the word I'm looking for is not quite loneliness, but like there is an emotion that has pushed me to reach out to friends. So like I was really delighted when I got your text yesterday. I was like, oh. So yeah.
Okay, let me go, because I don't want to think about it too much. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, very similar.
Yeah.
Like expectations,
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, desire, peace,
Mm-hmm.
and connection. It's been a pretty positive week for me.
That's
It's been
really
one of the better
good.
weeks of my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is something we did. I'm going to talk about my retreat like so often. It's something we did that I really liked, because it was like, you didn't have to go into detail. But
Mm-hmm.
you could just be like, pretty briefly, and I feel like the brevity almost makes it more like honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it forces you to like really pick and choose like what was meaningful about your time. Like I think yesterday I was like annoyed by like a minor inconvenience, but like when I zoom out and like think about my whole week, it's not that important, you know? And like that's not annoyed is not one of the words that I would pick for my week, so.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because I also definitely felt frustrated like at several points this past week.
Yeah, but it's like you choose not to focus on them, and like what else was important about this week, and like you said, peace, and so peace is like almost the opposite of annoyed.
So true. I mean, I've been meditating like every day. Sometimes actually most of the times multiple times a day.
How does meditation work? Because I don't quite know. I honestly worry that if I try it, I would just fall asleep. And Google keeps trying to feed me shit about like monks recently, and I'm like, I don't want to become a monk. I don't know where you're getting this, but yeah, like just meditation has kind of come up randomly. So how does that work?
Have you tried it before?
I don't really know what the process is. I don't know where to even start, so.
Super fair. I feel like the first time like I even heard about it in like a real sense was like I went through a phase where I listened to a lot of self-help podcasts, and like every self-help podcast person out there was meditating.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like a recurrent theme. Every time I listen to a new person, they'd be like, yeah, I was meditating. I have like a Zen meditation teacher, and I'm like, this guy too, okay. And then like some of them would like actually recommend like certain ways to try it, and that's how I got started. And the beginning was like so different than how it is for me now, because like there was so much like in my brain that I had not processed yet. So whenever I meditated, which is basically, to answer your question, like do something, do not do very much, like just kind of like tune into how my body's feeling. That's what meditation mostly is for me. So sometimes I walk and I meditate, but the best for me is just like sitting there. Yeah. Sometimes I usually like put a blanket on me, like making myself very comfortable. And I just sit there and like breathe. I mean, there's so many different variations, but generally it's like noticing. If in one word I would say meditation is noticing.
Is there like a specific thought pattern you're supposed to go on, or is it like no thoughts, head empty kind of thing? Because I've heard of different variations where they're like, it's actually very hard to think about nothing. So.
Well, that was like definitely part of my journey. Like I thought it had to be like clearer in the brain, but I'm like the opposite now. I'm like welcome everything in. Like I just open space for everything. Which is actually the closest I've gone to like thinking about nothing. Because eventually like I think about everything that's like concerned, like my body's concerned with, and then like there's like a very...
You like get to the end and you're just like, huh, okay, that's everything.
yes, that's like peace for me. I'm like, oh, that's what peace is. It's so nice. Yeah, but I mean, but it's different for... I would argue it's probably different for everyone, because everyone has a different brain and different experience. But there's a lot of overlap, like because people come, they have like meditation groups, which is something I'm interested in trying to find nearby. And I've been to some of them when I was at Georgia Tech and also at my retreat, and like we were like really feeling very similar things. So it's like, wow. So like we're different, but we're also the same. You know, like that's not a huge realization, but it's like heart knowledge at that point. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think I go about my day usually in, not that I'm like always thinking through things, but like the nature of working at a library is that you have a lot of quiet time to yourself. And so, especially me, because like most of my coworkers are usually like, they're checking books in, they're like processing new books and stuff. I'm just wandering around the shelves. Like it takes like very little brain power for me to like walk over to a shelf and put the books away. So I usually have a lot of time to sift through my thoughts, and like I've had a lot of fun, you know, like thinking through stories that I want to write, you know, getting inspired by all the books that I'm around, working through some of the stuff that's happening in my life, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if that counts as meditation, but it is like, you know, quietly reflecting. So
I don't know if there's anyone qualified to tell you what meditation is.
The Dalai Lama, actually. We need to find him. Be like, what are we doing?
Have you read his memoir, by the way?
No, I don't think so, but I do think we have copies of some Dalai Lama's memoir in the library, because I have shelved it a couple of times. So.
I think I got it from that library. So, yeah. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Is it true? There's a lady today that said that apparently they might be closing down the Lake Hiawatha library.
No, I don't think so. Because they were about... Oh, maybe, because it's going to get rebuilt.
Yeah.
So that's possible. So maybe that's what she's referring to.
Yeah, she made it sound like they might just tear it down and use the money that was gonna be used on the renovations to do something else. And so she was like, apparently she's very involved in the town in Parsippany, and she was just like, it's coming, and she was like asking for a list of like events in Montville, because she was worried that like she's gonna have to start coming to our libraries pretty soon, and we're like, uh-oh, okay.
Wait, a coworker or just a...
Not a coworker, just some random lady. She was looking for Vanity Fair. at first, and she was like, "Oh, is it gonna work? I have a Parsippany library card." And we're like, "Yeah, of course it's gonna work. You know, we're all in the main system."
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh yeah, might be coming here."
I need to restart it. Okay.
Okay. But yeah, the library's been popping. There's just lots of people constantly. I'm like, where did everyone come from?
I haven't been to the Lake Hiawatha Library recently, but the Lake Hiawatha Library is also usually popping.
Nice.
So they can't close it down. They
Okay.
can't. I like wrote them a letter recently because I want them to. Do you know like the situation with the renovations?
I heard that they were closed. Oh, Lincoln Park was closed for a bit. With Lake Hiawatha, I know that they're planning something, and apparently they've got like $1 million to renovate it. So.
I think it's like 2 million. It might be 2 million.
Ooh.
Yeah, but then they were like, oh wait, so yeah, so you're right. It's like they got 2 million from the like the New Jersey Library Foundation or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Parsippany Township agreed to match that, so they have 4 million to
Wow.
build a new library. But then the construction costs went up, so then they were like, can you like they were asking residents to ask the Parsippany Township to like increase the budget to be able to renovate. I mean, to build a new library instead of just renovate.
Mm.
And like the grant that from the New Jersey Library like will expire if the Parsippany Township doesn't reach a decision soon.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, yeah. So that's as far as I remember. I checked like a month ago, but since then I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have a bigger library because it's I don't know, every resident of Lake Hiawatha loves. Okay, I don't know every resident, but I know it has like so many programs
Mm-hmm.
for the town. So
It's so nice, like, you know, I see I go to the library every day, I see how it's like growing and changing, you know, like when I was a kid, I just thought the library stayed the same the entire time, and like, now I've been there for almost 2 years, and it's changed so much since I first started there, and like, every day people are coming in and like they take out books, I think this whole family came in this morning and like they all got library cards. Like it feels like the center of the community, and I really hope like I know that like libraries are facing some issues right now. Like apparently the New York Public Library System got their budget slashed by $13 million, which is insane. And like apparently too, there's been like book banning campaigns all over the country apparently, because like right-wing media has gotten really obsessed with like taking down gay books, especially because they're like, oh, they're grooming kids, it's all for the kids, of course. And so like they've had these attack campaigns where they're like, get rid of the books because they're bad for children, and apparently like a lot of librarians are retiring early because it's like they're getting harassed at work constantly. So it's like,
is that happening at Montville at all?
it hasn't happened at Montville, but over the summer we did have like our library director sent out an email saying like, hey, I recognize this is the situation going on in other parts of the country. It hasn't happened to us yet, but you know, she was just like flat out, we're not taking any of the books off the shelves. You know, the American Library Association has said nothing about censoring books, so we're not going to censor books. And in fact, like a month later, it was like, I think sometime in September or October, it was Banned Book Week. And so we had like a banned book display of like all the books that we have that people have tried to ban in other parts of the country. So it was really funny.
I can't believe I feel pretty upset by that information because I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's it hasn't happened here for sure. I mean, I think northern New Jersey is very progressive in a lot of ways, especially because like we have a high immigrant population, so it's hard to be like, oh, we're gonna ban books about race. It's like, how are you gonna accomplish that?
Yeah.
And we're so close to New York too, and New York is like very gay.
Yeah.
So,
I will stand up for the books.
I
and the
know.
gayness.
Literally every time I find an empty display, like we have these little stands that you can put the books on, and every time I find one of those empty ones, I'm like, ooh, okay, I know exactly what to put here. And so like I will go over to the shelf and I will look for literally any queer book, any book written by a person of color, and I'll just put it up there because I'm like, this is what people deserve to see, you know?
Dude, when I was at the Parsippany Library, so many of the display books were like, I mean, it's fine to be white and whatever, but like for all of them to be white on Parsippany, I was like, it's just, let's just try to be a little bit more balanced here. So I'm glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm just like, oh, okay, white person, nah. Like, I literally found a book that was like, apparently it's a YA book about like a romance between a merman and like this boy, and like the boy is, he's kind of like on the heavier side too, and so I was just like, oh, body positivity, yes, we're putting this like front and center.
I want to have a conversation with like people. Okay, this is kind of leading into the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is called conformity myths.
Ooh.
I just watched half of a video today about, it's like from this YouTube channel called Big Think.
I think I've heard of that.
I don't think everything that they put out is amazing, but
Mhm.
I like them overall.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'll just, so a collective myth, according to the author that they invited into the episode, was like, people tend to like have wrong impressions of what other people want and believe in. So he was saying like during the 1960s, there was the majority of white people did not want segregation, but they thought that the majority of white people did want segregation. So in order to be able to stay in the in-group, or the group that they felt like they belonged, they like did what everybody else thought they did what they thought other people believed in.
So like a groupthink kind of thing.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And he was saying like very similar things are happening today. One example he came up with was people think that the definition of success for the majority of people is the desire to be famous. But like research shows that it's actually out of 66 like general options that they like accumulated by asking a lot of people, it was the last thing people, like the least likely definition for success. And the most likely definition of success was unpredictable. Like it was so different across all the people they interviewed. So that just got me thinking, because I also believe that like there's just things that like there's things I'm afraid to talk about because I'm like, I don't know what other people believe and I don't want to be ostracized or criticized or canceled or be wrong, you know. So I'm thinking like I wonder if a lot of the people in these banned book movements, if they actually believe in that, or they're just like they live in a community that where people where the conformity myth is happening.
I think it is interesting. Like there's definitely there's a difference between thinking like, oh, I disagree with some of the books in the library, because like I certainly do. We have copies of books that are like climate change is fake, or like one of them, I can't believe it's still in like the science and nature section of our library, because it's like it was the title is something like The Case for Oil, and I'm like, no, shut up. So like, yes, I do disagree with some of the books that are in the library. That doesn't mean that I believe in removing them from the shelves. And I also think that, and like, there's a difference between disagreeing with what's in the library and going to the library and trying to destroy the books there, going to the library and harassing the staff and blaming the staff for that. Because let me tell you, there are like 3 people at the library who are in charge of actually getting materials. It's like our library director, the assistant director, and the children's librarian, right? The rest of us just hold the books. They just pass through our hands. We have no control over who over what books are in the collection unless they break, and then we have to be like, okay, we'll just put it away to get fixed. So, like, I'm sure that there are some people out there who have been misled into thinking, like, oh, there's bad stuff in these books, and, like, I'm sure they just don't want to question it. But I think it's another thing entirely to go to the location and physically be there and be a toxic presence to someone who's just doing their job. And their job is literally to serve you, the public. I don't know. I'm like really annoyed about this whole thing. I'm like, just leave the books alone.
Yeah.
But I do get what you're saying. Like, I think a lot of people, instead of asking what each other actually believe, they just assume like, oh, they probably think this, so if I ask about it, it makes me look like XYZ. And I think I don't know if it's something about our culture that like people have just been dissuaded from asking questions. I know that we have our culture is pretty harsh on ignorance. You know, it's very hard to admit that you don't know something, especially in the age of information where like you can just Google anything. But you know, Google's a twisted system. It's not always, it's kind of the conformity thing. Like depending on what area you are in and which cell tower you access, Google's gonna feed you slightly different results. So like if you're in an area that has a lot of jobs that are related to fossil fuels, you're likely to get a lot more climate change denial in your search results. So
Wow. I didn't even know that.
yeah, that's why like there's an information disparity. And it wasn't always like this. Like I think in the past Google was much more like equitable about how they distributed information. Like the core of Google was founded on the principle that like you should have a search engine that literally just gives you what you're looking for, you know, straight up. But over time its business model has become selling information to advertisers, and so now that's how they make money. And so the way that they the way they gather that information and sell it to different advertisers dictates what search results they give you. And so
Yeah.
based on all of that data crunching, it means that some parts of the country get different search results than others. And it feeds into their confirmation biases and the whole of like, it's like a terrible clash of data science and human psychology.
That is a whole world of discussion we can have. I know there are people at Google who are like trying to like, imagine like the weight on your shoulders if you work at Google on the team that like runs a search engine. It's like you have to determine what truth is.
Yeah.
And it's like, that must be difficult because I like don't know what truth is. I just know what I think.
Especially if they're a bunch of computer science dudes, they don't know shit about science. They're like, you know, someone's Googling like specific scientific criteria and you're like, I don't know what any of these words mean. So it's like, how am I supposed to verify which search results get there?
But the thing is like, I don't think search results get manually verified in any way anymore.
Yeah.
There's just too much information out there.
That's why it's just based on an algorithm, and I think the algorithm just matches like search terms to like appearances in other like links and stuff, and so.
And also engagement.
And engagement, yeah.
Which is not always rational or accurate.
Or good, yeah. It's like, just because you wanted to search up this one thing doesn't mean that, like the most engaged with thing is probably not the same thing that you're looking for. I was looking for like this very old, obscure textbook about dinosaurs. It's called The Book of Life. There's a 2014 animated movie called The Book of Life. And I was looking for the book and everything was just like The Book of Life starring like Channing Tatum, and I was like, I didn't want that. I just came here for the dinosaurs.
Wait. No, do you remember like this old movie about dinosaurs? Like it came out before 2010.
Oh my god, was it the one, were there lemurs in it? They were like monkeys?
I think so. There was there was like one of the dinosaurs with a very long neck.
Yes.
I know for sure he was in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that movie's called.
I think it's called Dinosaur. I think it was like, hang on, I can find a picture because it was one of my favorite movies of all time.
Me too. And the thing is, I just remember like being a kid watching it and being like, "This is so cute," like not be able to find it.
Is it this?
Yes.
Oh my god! I just rewatched it like 3 months ago.
Really?
This movie still slaps.
Really, I'm gonna watch it.
Dude.
I'm gonna watch it.
Oh my god! It still high key slaps, and not only that, like it was really like surprisingly woke. I guess I think. Like, I finished watching it, and I turned to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, this is communism. You raised me on dinosaur communism. And she was like, because it was all about, like, communal effort, right? And looking out for each other. Like, the hero and the villain of the stories had very clear ideologies. One was like, I'm just out here to get mine, and the other guy was like, no, we can help each other. You know, we can all survive this if we work together. And I was like, collective action, communalism. Like, what the hell? It was so good.
Oh my god, I need to watch it again.
I also think that there was a Styracosaurus and there was exactly one Brachiosaurus, and I think the two of them were just very old lesbians. Like, they were just the crabbiest grandmas, and they only liked talking to each other, and it was like, this is so good.
I'm obsessed with that. Wait, have you rewatched Shrek recently?
No, I did rewatch the Kung Fu Panda movies
okay.
recently. But Shrek 1, I still like Shrek 2 better, I think. But Shrek 1 is still really good. It's like a masterpiece.
Yes, I watched it and I was like, this is woke. And this was like 2008 or something, 2010? And I'm
2005, I think.
2005.
I think it was the first animated movie to ever win an Oscar for Best Animated Picture.
Period.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was so entertaining. It was like I mean, most of the things went over my head when I was like a 6-year-old child. But
a lot of it, I remember hearing that a lot of that movie exists as a specific critique on Disney movies. Because like the guy who co-founded DreamWorks Animation was Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he got kicked out of Disney. They disagreed on a lot of things, like creative wise, and so he just out of spite, Shrek, like he made Shrek so that like the princess could save herself, you know, and the guy who saves her is an ugly green guy, and there's like no singing. It was all pop songs, you know.
they subverted so many genres.
Yeah, they really.
Subversion.
It was really solid. I still think Shrek 2 is better, but like Shrek 1, like it's a film. It's not a movie. It's a film.
Yes. Yes. I think I'm out of questions for now.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. Should we end?
Sure.
We can keep talking, but I'm gonna end the.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if we've actually got anything out of it.
Hope it. You mean like recorded?